Hi, well, I'm not in Hawaii, but I'm certainly thinking about my friends and all my past experiences in Maui. This is a live shot that was taken at the time. It was taken from my balcony, a condo in an area called Kahana, which is not near Lahaina. Well, everything's pretty close there, but it was not anywhere near the fire. So it's really tragic what went on there. They will rebuild. The land is worth a fortune right by the water, and yet people's lives are worth much more than money. So we'll be right back with our broadcast. Okay, we're back on Global TV Talk Show, and I'm looks like it's in Maui, but that's where the shot was taken from our condo deck too many months ago. Wish I was back there. It's located in Kahana, which is not next to Lahaina. So there's absolutely no fire or any damage in this part of the island, which is north, just north of Kaanapali. And Kaanapali is north and around the bend from Lahaina. So this show is dedicated to our friends and our memories of Lahaina. And our special guest is Aaron. Aaron has a very positive experience as well in Hawaii. Welcome, Aaron Shorn. Tell us about your life in Hawaii.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here. I became an educator in Hawaii. I found my calling as a professional in Hawaii, and was really lucky to have teachers that were incredible project-based learning educators, but also had sailed on Hokulea, the voyaging canoe that had sailed around the world, only using Hawaii navigational practices. So truly understood what authentic education meant.
Now, part of the write-up that you sent me earlier, don't mean to interrupt, but
No,
I just want
please
to jump on this
interrupt as much as possible.
before I forget what I wanted to say, was that Pua
Yeah, Pualani Lincoln, totally.
taught you how to direct the sail. Can't change the wind, but you can direct the sail.
Totally.
Oh, tell us about that.
I mean, I think Pua is a master educator, and she learned how to be a teacher and a learner on a sailing canoe. And I think Pua represents when teachers and learners are most powerful is when what they're doing connects to their identities and their backgrounds and who they are as people. And Pua taught me that. And she taught me that through my role at an independent school called HPA, where she was also a teacher and where we built out this really incredible K-12 capstone program for students in 5th, 8th, and 12th grade. And
now,
then
is
Pua,
that on
go for it.
Oahu?
It's on the big island of Hawaii, otherwise known as
Hawaii.
Hawaii Island, in a town called Waimea. And then Pua also helped me with Nalukai, a youth entrepreneurship program, 10-day intensive entrepreneurship boarding program for high school students across Hawaii. And through those programs, Pua just taught me what it means to be an authentic educator, what it means to give students systems and relationships that allow them to take their ideas and get them out into the world. So she's everything, man. And I think I owe my career and the trajectory I'm on right now to her and other Hawaiian educators that have helped me so much.
So Pua is spelled P-U-A, as I saw. So
Yep.
tell me, where is Waimea relevant to where all the fancy hotels are?
Waimea is upcountry, so it's kind of
Okay.
in the middle of the Big Island, Hawaii Island, and it's up in the mountains, up in the Kohala Mountains.
Yeah, so upcountry means by the ranch, the cowboy ranch.
100%. So similar to Maui, there's this incredible Paniolo or Hawaiian cowboy cowgirl community. And so, I went to high school in Texas. It was like I was transported back to Central Texas, like just like big trucks, lifted Toyotas. Like it's a really cool kind of local culture to be in.
Yes, yeah. I remember it's been a few years, too many years since I've been back on the Kona side, and then upcountry. Drive in order to get from Kona to Hilo, which is on the other side of the island, you have to go up and down the ranch. I forget the name of the ranch, big cowboy ranch, cattle ranch.
Yeah, there's
King.
Parker Ranch, there's all kinds of
Parker
ranches.
Ranch, that's
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
right, right. And we had lunch in town at naturally a cowboy place. It was a lot of fun. Okay, so let's talk about education and what is wrong with American public education in general.
Sure, we'll solve the entire problem in 20 minutes. It'll be great.
Okay, so it's individualistic. I read your thing here. So
Sure.
it said that you're so used to a loving, collegial, cooperative environment where people learn together and do things together and respect each other. And typical American public school education is no, everybody's got to learn one on themselves.
Sure.
And you're saying from an educator's point of view, the other way is better.
I mean, absolutely. And this isn't like, I think the word innovation gets thrown around until it's bullshit in education, right? Like what we're talking about is not innovation. What we're talking about is how we've always learned around a campfire with our relatives. My grandfather survived the Holocaust because he had a trade in craft. He was a tool and die manufacturer. And his whole education was apprenticeship. He learned with others. He learned from others in these authentic relationships. And so I think communal learning is nothing new. Learning with others, working on projects, designing and interacting with your community is not the next buzzword in education. It's what education kind of has always been about. And I think for me, school was it wasn't where I learned. School was where I schooled. School was where this form of education was done to me. I learned outside of school. I learned entrepreneurially with friends. I learned in summer programs that weren't bound by the same weird metrics that school wraps up. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it all trickles down from the college application process, which is a lonely experience as well. That goes to 12th grade, that goes to 9th grade, that goes to middle school, and all the way down to K-5. And for me, working with K-5 was so much easier because there was a joy and curiosity in how they learned. There was still that like learning is about me and my friends and being a sponge. And then somewhere in that middle school to high school space, that world dies. And so my work in education, to wrap it up, is like extending K-5, essentially, extending how we assess into middle school and high school and extending how we work with each other to be more like how we were as K-5 students.
Let's go back to that young age when your parents were teachers in Southern Africa.
Yeah.
So what do you describe that in Lesotho? Is that it?
Lesotho.
Lesotho. Okay. How do you spell that?
Lesotho.
Oh, and O is pronounced O.
Yes, Lesotho. And my dad worked for UNESCO, education wing of the UN.
Mhm.
My mom started a primary school in Swaziland in a town called Pigs Peak, and they met just kind of in youth circles. And I was so damn lucky to spend the first 7 years of my life in Maseru, the capital. And though there was apartheid in South Africa during the time, there wasn't apartheid in Lesotho, even though Lesotho is inside of South Africa. So I grew up in a predominantly Black African setting with a ton of expats as well, but grew up in a world where learning and education were in community, where spirituality, religion, music, dance, like how we connect with others was done in community. And we talked about this before we started recording. When I moved to Western Massachusetts, it was the opposite of that and was really hard. It took me many, many years to adjust to the United States.
Well, it's almost like going from, and this show is not political, but everything is mixed in. You're going from, I wouldn't call it blue versus red, but you're going into a welcoming together kind of feeling into a strict autocratic situation.
Totally. And I think I went from being seen and heard and loved to not, right? And for a 7-year-old, that's super jarring. And I went from learning because I love learning to learning because someone else tells me I have to do these things to move on to the next grade. And that loss of agency and empowerment, I mean, really kills off a love of knowledge acquisition and a love of advancing one's craft at a really early age. And much of my work at Unruler in technology and at Nalukai, which is a youth entrepreneurship program, is about decolonizing and reinstilling that kind of love of learning and this ability, forgive my TED Talk language, of shifting learning from passive to active. Whether you're a 40-year-old or whether you're 14, how do we make learning in your professional career a more active experience than a passive experience?
That's very clear analogy, except for one word you use there, agency. What
Hmm.
does agency mean? I mean, I think of a sports agent or something.
I
What's
think
that mean?
for me, agency is the act of empowerment, is the ability to
Giving you the power.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
And again, being active in your trajectory, having agency over your trajectory.
Control.
Control.
Yeah. Okay. So when I was a kid in school, I had a number of problems, including stuttering. So here, as you can tell, I haven't started stuttering yet, but this is my therapy. But the topic I loved the most was geography.
Mm,
I don't know who told me, whether it's my dad or my grandfather. I really don't remember. They said it took one of these big map books, big, heavy, colorful map books, an atlas or something, and it says, this is the US. Memorize where you are, memorize each state name, each state capital, if there's any river going through the area. That's step one. And come back, and I'll give you a reward. I remember clearly. I think I was probably 10, but maybe a little younger. And I did. And I
mm,
just loved the whole thing.
mm.
And then I could tell, okay, how far is it from, I grew up in Brookline, which is Boston. How far is that to California? I didn't even know where California was other than watching cowboy movies. So I traced, okay, what roads go there? Well, at that time, there weren't any interstate highway systems. And so, I said, okay, it looks up 3,000 something. And then I took that into my, as it turns out, my current industry for the last 40 years has been relocation, employee relocation. And that means recruitment. And that means regional economic development as a result of the wealth transfer and investment building up an area. And that's the business that I'm in. But it all started from knowing geography,
Totally.
fairly comfortable.
A moment of authentic learning.
And that's it. Now, that came out of love, not from being competitive or anything.
No, totally. I mean, and my work at Unruler is through technology documenting those authentic moments and having those authentic moments be even more important than a standard test score, or having those authentic moments be something that builds community, whether you're working abroad and you're trying to find community. What I'm trying to shift at Unruler and in education at large is how we assess and how we show evidence of our progress, of our whatever terminology you want to use, KPIs, OKRs, skills, competencies, values. Like, I want learners and employees and travelers to be able to actually demonstrate their growth, actually demonstrate who they are, actually demonstrate and show evidence of these incredible skills they're gaining. In a world that's super quantitative, in a world where we're always going to numbers, I'm trying to make it about story and about kind of qualitative data as well. And it's really hard. It's really hard to shift the conversation. It's really hard to show people the power of storytelling and the power of qualitative data, but it's also really joyous to kind of, break down some of these older systems.
Let's talk about storytelling. That's what global TV talk show is all about. It's
Totally.
people telling stories, and you're
Yeah.
telling a really good story here. Before we get into that, I was connected to you from our mutual friend, Chase.
Yeah.
Okay, so is he helping you?
I mean, we met at South by Southwest EDU. It's a cool story. I'm sitting in in these conferences, everyone's like has to do their extra work. I'm sitting in an empty um, conference room and I just look up and it looks like a nice guy and we start a conversation. And I tell him about my work at Unruler and about storytelling and kind of story catching and learning communities. And like we were just instantly connected. He told me his story, the work that he's doing, and our stories connected us. And I've created a really awesome kind of professional and personal friendship that has now led to you and me talking.
Yeah, interesting guy. Yeah, when he was doing bridge school, uh, just after we started the show 3.5 years ago, he and his partner at the time did, I don't know, must have done 30, 40 broadcasts.
Hmm.
It was really interesting. And now he's back involved in his own business, Furskin, but uh, making introductions.
I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah.
was always massively influenced by Humans of New York, this really amazing storytelling platform that you can see on Instagram and other places. And Humans of New York, it's a simple picture of a person and a narrative. That narrative can be 2 words, that narrative can be 600 words. And it's this authentic vignette of that person during that day and their life experience. And as an educator, I was like, how do I make my education, my class like Humans of New York? How do I allow my learners, whether they're adults or teenagers or children, to be able to also tell the story of who they are and where they're at in that moment too? And I think that's what connected Chase and I, was just this idea that our stories um, are evidence of what we're embarking on and what we're trying to do, and that more people should be looking at these stories.
Humans of New York. I've never heard of that, but it's
Oh, it's
intriguing.
amazing. Check it out. Check it out after the call. It's a great like kind of storytelling uh, um product and platform.
I will. That's a great theme. I'm going to work on that. So, to what extent is your teachings Unruler, if you can get into what that is, and it's an
Yeah,
unusual spelling, by the
it
way.
is.
So it's R,
It's
no, it's UNLRN, what?
I'll hit you with it. It's UNRULR. UNRULR Unruler. And Unruler is a mobile and web browser kind of app and platform that allows learning communities, whether you're a nonprofit, a school, or for profit, to be able to take your competencies or your KPIs and have learners tag posts that they create with those competencies. So videos, photos, audio, kind of evidence of what they're working on or what you want them to show evidence of, that are being tagged with the kind of competencies that you want shown in your program. The power of that is you're able to actually show evidence, and a learner is able to show evidence of what they're doing and what they're embarking on. And because it's visual, because it's multimedia or multimodal, there's like a lot more richness to the qualitative data that you're collecting. So essentially, it's a story catching tool. It's a tool that kind of looks and feels like social media, but it's internal and private to a learning community.
It sounds complicated, but I think it's probably in practice simple.
Yeah, and I mean, a simpler way of putting it is it's an internal kind of feed of your learning community. And your learners are documenting what they're working on and who they are via multimedia. And they're tagging that work with what you want evidence to be kind of in your learning
Now, when
community.
you say tagging, please forgive me.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
I'm getting a little old, but tagging means the hash sign next to a word.
Very similar, very similar. So an unruler, it's basically like a badge, and you're clicking that badge. So let's say empathy is something that you want your learners to show evidence of, or grit, or quantitative reasoning. You have that kind of in your unruler community. And as a learner is creating a post, they're hitting that badge or that tag. And then you're able to track all of that data, and they're able to show evidence of these pieces throughout. And in the world of 2023 education, we talk about portraits of a graduate or competencies, and not just having test scores be the way that students get into college, but like they're proof of a skill that can be shown, kind of irrefutably. And Unruler is a really great tool in those spaces because There's now video evidence, audio evidence, photo evidence of what a learner is doing, not just a long narrative essay that probably AI helped them write.
Okay, so just to simplify now and do a little translation of what you
Yeah.
just were talking about, you're talking about evidence-based learning
Yes.
and application.
Yes.
Okay, evidence-based. It's almost like, well, being an engineer or being a lawyer, and you got
Yep.
to document and bookmark, or
Yep.
footnote, I meant, not bookmark. And so evidence-based learning could be getting used to using, here's the analogy, getting used to using video and Zoom and not being afraid of that camera to express oneself and to
Yeah.
ask questions or tell a story. And then that's recorded.
Yep.
Now you play it back on YouTube or wherever, and it's evidence that, hey, you've done
Right.
it. You
Right.
you learned how to do this. And you could take that cut, that clip, if you wish, and put it into a resume saying, hey,
Yep.
I can do this. I'm good
Yep.
in front of a camera.
Yep. Totally. And for us, we're trying to make that frictionless. We're trying to have learners create portfolios so that they don't have to pull from 20 different YouTube videos, but it's kind of all in one feed that they can share out with others. And so much of our work's also community building. How do we allow learners in a community to see what other people in their community are doing and be influenced and be taught by it? How do we see maybe a cohort of families that are working in Brazil, to be in a community together and be taught by being in this kind of feed and create relationships and community, or a homeschool group, or a nonprofit that's trying to have families connect with their Hawaiian heritage. Unruler becomes this kind of private space where they're documenting and sharing with each other in really meaningful ways.
So this is sort of related to another company or group person that Chase introduced me to. Tamara in Arizona has got like the one-room schoolhouse.
Oh, yeah.
So it's sort of, I mean, that's a kind of a leap, but that's an extension of the same idea.
I mean, I love one-room schoolhouses. I think, like, for my work at Unruler and education in general, I want to make learning visible. And I want to allow learners to be taught by other learners. In most education infrastructure, the teacher has all of the power as the educator. But I want learners to learn from someone closer in age. I want, a friend to be teaching you something. The cool thing about a one-room schoolhouse, and Tamara and others' work, is that you might have a sixth grader who's in the same room as a second grader. And there's so much incredible way of what we call an education zone of proximal development, or ZPD, the ability to learn from someone who's closer in age, who kind of can more authentically teach you something. And so a lot of my work in Unruler is just like having that be visible, having learners post something in a private community, and then other learners be able to see it, comment on it, engage with it, be taught by it, and not just have the teacher be the sole source of knowledge.
So let's just take the example, if we can take a leap here. My imagination is tuned in to what you're trying to do here. And I'm thinking of my geography example.
Sure.
And and let's say I was a sixth grader.
Yep.
And that means I was probably, 12 years old or something. And or around that age. And it's a one-room schoolhouse situation. And there's somebody in like third grade. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And the third grade topic at that moment was American history, America as a place. And so the states, the cities, this nation. And, a kid in the third grade, most kids anyways, are learning that for the very first time. And so the geography is, okay, what state are you in and what's the capital? What's a capital? And so I, as a sixth grader, 12 years old, would somehow be asked to help the kid and saying, well, there's a seat, there's a place of government and offices in the buildings and where a lot of people go to work. And so that's a city. And we're in a state, and there's a lot of cities, maybe not so big, but they're strung out together. And so the kid's learning, the third grader is learning context and depth, not just a rote fact.
Totally.
And that's the big difference,
Well,
right?
and the difference is like, I mean, any student can reflect that when their teacher was passionate about what they were teaching, they learned more,
Right.
right?
And
It was
they
an
tie it
authentic
together,
relationship. Totally. And
tie it
so
together.
imagine you're a sixth grader and you've just figured out your love of geography. And now you're going to pass that love to the third grader. And the third grader is going to see your passion and see your excitement and see your exuberance and know that this is important. And thus, hopefully, attach some passion and importance to geography in a way. And so, in that one room schoolhouse model, it didn't just have to come from the teacher. She empowered, there was now agency for the other students in that class to be able to deliver that to the younger student. And for me at Unruler, it's digitizing that. It's making that a virtual experience. It's making that a virtual record or a digital record, right? I want my passion when I'm showcasing my love of geography. I'm on my mobile device. I'm showing you where I'm at. I'm talking about the skill that I have. I'm uploading that video. I want someone else in my private community in Unruler to see it, to comment on it, to be inspired to post something kind of afterwards too. And so I love that. I mean, I think it's, again, it's about these authentic connections with each other that for the most part school has killed off. And my work is now trying to bring that back to the forefront.
So with educators not giving SATs out anymore, college admission, uh, how are college entrance officials doing a fair, good job?
I mean,
I don't get it. I don't.
I mean,
I hated the SATs.
They're still doing
but
the SATs. They're still doing the SATs and ACTs, and some schools don't allow you to not use them. And I understand SATs and ACTs. I understand the allure of quantitative data. It's hard. It's hard as a college counselor to understand what a 4.0 means at the school in California versus the school in Colorado, or vice versa. I totally understand that. But the college game has always been rigged. I mean, it's always been rigged due to legacy admissions. It's always been rigged due to how the SAT is written and the ACT is written. It's written for people that look, not to be political, more like you and me. And so I think what I'm really interested in is challenging that and having portfolios and having real evidence of learning also be, if not just as important, close to as important as standardized test scores, and allowing a learner to irrefutably show that they know something, or that they can achieve something, or that they can build something. So much of my work in project-based learning and education outside of Unruler is like just teaching students project management and how to build things and how to engage so that they can show that to universities and colleges and also get in. And also for students that don't want to go to college, that want to have a clear path to a vocation, allowing them to build out resumes and portfolios of work that allow them to get a job right after. So I don't know. I mean, I think college applications is broken. I'll say it right now. I think the application process traumatizes hundreds of thousands of youth in America and around the world. I've seen it firsthand with the teenagers I work with. They are taught that they should go to specific schools, and if they don't get into them, they won't have a future. Or they're taught to apply to 40 schools and spend way too much money. Kids come out of college with an immense amount of debt. Many universities do not prepare students for the workforce afterwards, or way more importantly, to be entrepreneurs and build their own futures for them. So I'm trying to be in that murky world of what do we do when so much of college is failing our youth?
I'll tell you, as I said, I had somewhat of a traumatic childhood experience connected with schools. But I did graduate in Brookline, and then college applications, everyone in my family, almost everyone went to Ivy League schools, but not me. And so I had trouble. And so I should have applied to Northeastern because they had that 5-year deal
Co-op, amazing
with
program.
the co-op, and you went to work and you learned skills, and
It's amazing.
inevitably you get hired by
Totally.
the company in which you were an intern. Should have done that. That is the answer. other than for book smart kids who belong in an Ivy League school. Who cares? But not me. I was not trained for that. I had no aptitude at that age.
I mean, it's really interesting. So Unruler's founder and CEO, the kind of person who coded out the tool, is named Will Rapoon, native Hawaiian, incredible human being, almost like an anti-founder, someone who's extremely humble, and is always trying to not overpromise, but to over-deliver. Will went to Punahou, where Barack Obama graduated from, probably the most elite school in Hawaii. And he went to Harvard, so computer scientist at Harvard. And he knew how to play the game. And he did not love both experiences. He didn't love that he wasn't able to share out who he was, his culture as a native Hawaiian. He wasn't able to have his learning documented and assessed in a way that he felt was true to who he was at all. But he knew how to play the game. I did not know how to play the game. I went to a good public school in Central Texas, went to the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, good public school, but definitely not Harvard. And it was in my first jobs after university that I found out what I loved to do, that I found out what I was good at, that I found out what I wasn't good at and what I needed to improve in. And so for both of us, his Harvard education and my UMass education, neither really prepared us for what we were going to do kind of later in life. It was the experiences we had with our families, our friends, our mentors that showed us that kind of way. And those are the places where we learned the most. And Will talks a lot about how when he would go back to his neighborhood in Kaimuki on Oahu, his family members, his parents weren't asking him what he learned at Punahou or Harvard. They were asking him what he learned when he was out on the water, what he learned when he was with his family and friends, right? That was the knowledge that mattered to them. And I'm trying to make that into school in many ways too.
Nice to meet you. Please come back.
Oh, thank you so much. Forgive me for over talking, but this was a wonderful experience.
I could listen. I don't think the audience will. So I'm good.
Thank
so
you.
Come back and we'll break it up into a smaller bit.
Will do.
Thank you, Aaron. Nice to meet you. And come back to Global TV Talk Show, perhaps with Chase. Let's build a show.
Honored to be here. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Bye-bye now. Aloha.